for all of you that bought matinee tickets and thought you were going to get a cheap show, you aren't getting the star. I'm filling in for Pastor Steir today. And there's a reason that I'm dressed like this. It's Lent. It's a season of preparation and thinking about, things that have gone on in your life. And Tuesday this week, my very best friend of 44 years passed away. And he gave me this tie. And we used to try to outdo each other with DNA ties. I wouldn't wear mine to court when I had to testify, but he would. So they would always say, "Oh, you're not the DNA tie guy." When they were differentiating between us. So I wore this for him. And also, I have a jacket on because I think in all the years I was growing up, my father would never let me go to church without a coat and tie. Because he did. He was minister of music. And so he was always in front of the congregation. So he always wore a coat and tie. So in part, I'm wearing the coat for him. The other part of that is that Gina is doing the music, which means that we're doing it all on the computer. And you will find that our hymns have different tempos and much longer introductions. And the first hymn actually has, 10 verses? 9. So if you don't know it at the beginning, you will by the end. And God said, "Let there be light." And light is one of our more sacred symbols in Christianity. Light, when you turn on a light in a room, you're looking forward. Right? You're looking forward as the light fills the room. And certainly when God said in Genesis 1, verse 3, "Let there be light," there was nothing but forward. That was the only way that could be looked. And here, it seems, in the season of Lent, we talk about preparation, we talk about, thinking about things we've done. But we're preparing. We're preparing for Easter. We're preparing for Jesus' public ministry. We're looking forward. And I think that's critical because it all started with, "Let there be light." And, as we look forward, we also remember that light helps us do other things. It helps us keep our fears at bay. Right? Little kids, they have a night light on. Right? At graves, we light an eternal flame. Right? To keep back that which we don't want to face, or that we know should be held back. And interestingly, I think that during the course of the Old Testament, light becomes an important symbol in that we start to think about it as our developing relationship with God. Right? And throughout all of the Old Testament, we hear the stories of Abraham that we heard today and last week. And in all of it, we have this sort of growing relationship. Right? And if you think about it, when God said, "Let there be light," there was no one to hear it. Man didn't come along for another 5 days. Right? So, at the end of day 6, the world population was 2. It's about 7.5 billion now. But it was 2. And as the Irish would say, there was that unpleasantness with the snake in the apple. Right? And so we made sort of a bad job of it. From the very beginning, this relationship was going to be a tough one. And You know, God could have taken the more modern approach that we use now when we have things that don't go right. We call it an alpha version, right? We do bug reports, then we scrap the whole thing and start over again. He didn't do that. He meted out some punishment, surely, but he realized that this relationship would have to grow. And we finally did grow and do it bad enough that there was that unpleasantness with Noah and the flood. Right? So God clearly understood that this tough relationship got tougher. But even then, God said to Noah, I'm never going to do this again. Right? And our relationship, it grows, but through all of it, God chose people to try and use them as examples to teach. Last summer, we got to hear Pastor Gherkin talk to us about difference makers. People who God picked to do certain things at certain times and demonstrate His power. That if you followed God, that if you believed in God, there was a future. Because there was an awful lot of other things going on that clearly were leading people astray. Right? The Old Testament is full of stories and things where God chose kings, He chose ordinary people, and everybody in between to be somebody who could stand as an example. As He said to Abraham, your nation, your children will become kings of nations. Right? And so, as all of this happens, right, after Abraham, from the descendants of Abraham, comes David. Right? The house of David. And God said, let there be light. And we had the Christmas star. And the Christmas star gave us Jesus. And at this moment, our relationship with God was no less tough than it already had been, and was continuing to get tougher. I mean, certainly John the Baptist was beheaded over it. Our gospel reading today talks about losing your life. This was going to be a tough relationship. But in all of this, we have the symbolism of light. Right? Keeping darkness at bay. And as we go through this and as we think about it, we see lots of times where God and Jesus asked us to use our heads. Right? And Jesus said to His disciples, who do you say I am? Right? Who do you say that I am? He didn't tell them, this is who I am. He didn't stand up and say, this is who I am, no other. He didn't say, I'm here to do all these things, follow me. No. He many times did say, follow me, but He always taught. He was teaching. He was using examples. He was asking us to answer the question, who do you think that I am? And that's critical. Think about this. This relationship we've had with God hasn't gotten any easier in the last 2,100 years. Right? The council at Nicaea was convened in 325 AD for the simple reason that there were so many different versions of things going on that somebody had to try and put it all together. Right? And they didn't have Facebook and Word and all the other stuff. Right? So they were trying to unify. They were trying to bring together when they sat in Nicaea. right? And throughout history, we have tried over and over again, right, to bring things together, to try and overcome conflict. And why? Because as people of God, we want to do that, right? But we know it's going to be tough. Who here remembers the Time magazine cover of April 10th, 1966? Gina doesn't get the answer. I already pre-briefed her. Sorry. It was iconic. It was 3 words. Is God dead? Everybody remembers now. But you see, it was all part of that relationship. Mankind, what was going on, right? We had the civil rights movement. We had Vietnam. We had diseases. And people began to wonder. And it's an interesting read if you go back and reread it. But the point was that man was asking, what's going on? It was tough. This is a tough relationship. And it was very hard to remember that what Jesus did was teach. Right? After he asked the disciples, who do you think I am? He taught them. He asked them to use their minds. He asked them to sort the wheat from the chaff. He said, I will teach you. And through all of his ministry, he used parables. He talked to anybody. Right? Which the whole talking to anybody thing didn't stand him in very good stead with various groups of Pharisees and others. But it never stopped him. So, when we are asked, how tough is this? The answer is really tough. Really tough. But you know what? God also said, I have your back. Right? He lets us know that he has our back. And in thinking about all the things that have gone on, certainly for me this week, but for others, loved ones lost, friends lost, over 500,000 dead in this country alone. God tells us he has our back. In chapter 5 of Matthew, he says, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall have comfort. Think about that. He knows it's going to be tough, and he knows we're going to hurt. But he says, you shall have comfort. He also reinforces, use your brain. Blessed are those who seek righteousness. Right? For they shall be filled. Wow. Okay. We get it. It's going to be tough. But God's got our back. Through all of the Beatitudes, he reminds us he's got our back. This is going to be tough. We're going to hurt. But he has our back. He has our back. And then, what happens? Right after the Beatitudes, just a couple verses later, what does Jesus say? You are the light of the world. Right? And he talks about the city on the hill and putting the light on top of the basket, not under the basket. You are the light of the world. So there it is. We learn through the Old Testament that the relationship with God is going to be tough. That our relationship with God today is going to be tough. but we know that God has our back. So when he asks us, who do you say that I am? It's okay to think about it. It's okay to internalize it. It doesn't have to be a pat answer, because that answer might be different on any one different day. I would have answered differently about 1 o'clock on Tuesday than I will answer today. And I will answer differently tomorrow. But that's part of a tough relationship. Part of it is knowing that the other person in the relationship, the other part of the relationship, has your back. So it's okay that it's tough. It's okay that it's hard, because there will be joy. And there will be comfort. And there will be fulfillment. God tells us that. Jesus gave us those answers. And then he said, you are the light of the world. And God said, let there be light. Amen.